Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas. A little sleep deprived today, recording on Tuesday, September 6th, right after Labor Day. And my Labor Day was a little bit crazy. And today, and I'm pitching a doubleheader, 2 in a row today, but the first one was really good. Today I have with me Christine Hofbeck, who is an actuary and the author of the book Winning Conditions. What's the subtitle? How to Achieve the Professional Success You Deserve by Managing the Details That Matter. So, Christine, first of all, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
It's going awesome. It's nice to meet you. I am not sleep deprived from Labor Day weekend because unfortunately I was painting my son's bedroom this weekend. So I was not out partying it up or doing anything exciting like that. But yeah.
Yeah, not nearly as fun. Not nearly as fun. No, so I've had a really crazy few days, basically. So I was at a conference last Thursday, in Austin, Texas, in SureTech Austin, and I flew back on Friday morning, and I landed I live in Atlanta, Georgia, specifically because of the airport. The airport, the weather, the cost of living. Okay,
Awesome.
So I only fly Delta for life. I land in Atlanta and I email my girlfriend, long-term girlfriend, who's also in insurance. We're both MBAs, both CPCUs. And I email her and I say, hey, can you take the orange juice out of the freezer? I think I'm coming down with a little cold. My nose is runny. And she replies and says, I will grab you a COVID test and leave it on the table. And message me when you get out of the train, and I will leave and go do groceries. And I'll come back once you've tested negative. And we've been super careful. We're both vaccinated.
Yeah.
We've been super careful. So she's done this to me many times. And every time I've been negative. Like, we both have made it this far without ever getting it. We don't have any kids, so it's easy to hide at home, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I get home and I come upstairs. I'm preparing to take a shower. I swab my nose, kind of thing. Set the timer for 15 minutes. 5 minutes, and it's positive. And
oh my gosh, I am so sorry to hear that.
Oh yeah. So I call her and I'm like, I'm positive.
Yeah.
And her mom is having surgery today, and she's the one taking her to surgery. And this is in Ohio. She was flying out on Sunday, so she's like, okay, get in the shower. I packed my bags when you when you messaged me from the plane, and I'll come in, pick up my bag, fly to Ohio today, and I'll message you when I'm out of that apartment. So anyway, so we do that. I don't see her at all. She heads to Ohio without exposure, and then I have to call my brother because he's coming to visit for Labor Day. So I call my brother, and I say, hey, are you vaccinated? Yes. Okay. Hey, I just tested positive. We can reschedule for later. What do you want to do? And he's like, I'm good. Okay, cool. So he comes. So it's a really crazy story. So I'm 40. He's 20. Well, I'm going to be 40 in December. He's 20. We've never met. I knew he existed, but we didn't connect until earlier this year. So we've chatted like 3 times, and this is the first time meeting.
Wow, your brother.
Yes, and
that's amazing.
And we look just like it's like a little clone of me because we both look just like my dad.
Yeah.
So anyway, so luckily COVID treated me well. I just had a runny nose the whole weekend. I had to wear a mask, be careful. We mostly hung out at home, but it was fantastic. So last night we're up super late, chatting, right, trying to like get the most out of the visit. And I end up getting like 4 hours of sleep, and he gets 0, right? But he's 20; he can get away with 0. At almost 44 is harder.
It's tougher. Yeah.
So at 5, he has an 8 a.m. flight. So at 5 a.m., I drop him off at Atlanta International Airport, and I drive back home. I nap for an hour and a half, shower, get ready to work, and start catching up on emails because I've been ignoring them all weekend. And he calls, and I'm like, shouldn't you be in the plane? And he made it through security in time, made it to the gate, was the first person at the gate and then fell asleep and missed his flight.
Oh my gosh. So did he get a later flight or did he come back to your house?
Yeah. Now, right now, because of the labor shortage, there's only one Delta flight a day to Costa Rica. So he's rebooked for tomorrow, 8 a.m.
All right, so you get one more night with your brother.
So we get an encore. So super cool, and it's fine. Like it's perfectly fine. He's not like late for work or anything. It's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been like a crazy week basically. And then today, I live on the 14th story of a 28-story apartment in Midtown, and my window is floor to ceiling, and it faces east, so I get a ton of light.
Yeah.
So the AC proceeds to die today. And we reported it to maintenance at 10 a.m. this morning, and we're still waiting for them to come. So I'm like sweating buckets here.
So it's like 100 degrees where you are. You look good though. You look good. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Luckily, it wasn't in July. So Christine, as I was telling you before we started recording. So I love to have authors on the podcast. Anybody that writes a book and is within the insurance space, I love to have them on. And so I messaged you to get you on the podcast before reading it. And then I listened to the audiobook, by the way, amazingly well produced. Like the narrator did. I prefer author narrated, but as a fellow author, I would never sit down to narrate my own book. So whoever did the narration is amazing, like just amazing. Like
Carissa Vacker, we'll give her a shout out right here.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's an award-winning narrator. They put a bigwig on this book, which was great for me.
And it deserved it. It really, really deserved it. So I've done a lot of talking already. So for the listeners, right? I'm guessing some people will listen to this who are just fans of your work, but I'm guessing most of the listeners will be my usual listeners who are insurance, insurtech, maybe some actuaries, but for the most part, insurance, insurtech people, like business side. So tell me a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it.
Okay, so the book is called Winning Conditions. I'll show it to the people who are watching it on YouTube. All right, so early on in my career, all the way back to college, I will say, I began to notice that it wasn't always the most prepared person who was getting all of the success, or the person who worked the hardest or put in the most hours. And there were times that I came to the table and thought, I am crushing it at work. And yet it was the other person who got promoted.
And I've got to say, so, well, I was listening to the audiobook, the introduction, and I'm not an actuary. I'm the exact opposite. I'm a salesperson basically, and I'm a C student, right? You were probably an A student, and if I've noticed anything in my career, is that I've ran laps around a lot of A students, not because I'm smarter, not because I'm harder working, but I just have an ease in growing my career, and as an actuary, I'm guessing that you have people who choose the actuarial path probably have an expectation that if all the numbers align, if the work quality is as good as it can be, I will win, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that it's an actuary thing. I think it's just a human thing. So you were probably born with qualities that enabled you to get out and create your own winning conditions, right? Create the engagements, create value for yourself, set up your environment so that you could get a win. And the idea here is, how do the people who are going to work and crushing it every day and putting in the time, etc., how can they also ensure that they come out the other side? So the idea here is that the amount of success that you have in your life is not only based on the work that you do. You can actually set up the conditions around the delivery of your great work that enable you to win. And I call that winning conditions.
I love how the origin story, I love how first you have a failure, right?
Yeah.
and then you have an unexpected victory right
Exactly. Where
early
I
on.
was not the most qualified and I won that thing and I was not the
So,
most qualified. And I thought, well, that's weird. What just
so
happened there?
I love the approach that when you have the unexpected win, you don't go like, woof, that was lucky, but rather you go like, let's really dig into why I did win when I shouldn't have. Uh, and that's what starts building the whole
That's
winning
right.
conditions
That's right. So that
idea.
really, yeah, so that really kicked off a deep thoughtfulness throughout my career and observations of what causes people to have wins. What is a win, right? It could be anything. It could be a promotion. It could be recognition. It could be that your project is accepted. It could be many things, right? But the idea is what causes people to win. And through my career, I had a lot of opportunities to sort of view. I was in consulting, so I had a lot of opportunity to see different teams and different dynamics, and did a lot of reading, went back to graduate school, studied a lot of behavioral economics, and put together these ideas of winning conditions. And then I began speaking. Go ahead.
Uh,
Then
so,
yeah,
so behavioral economics and
yeah.
the consulting part. Okay, so you go into consulting. I never did work consulting, but I'm an MBA. So lots of people went into consulting, right? Uh, so I love in consulting the how this is I think the first lesson. I don't remember exactly, but how in consulting you compare yourself to this other
Uh,
employee or this other consultant who starts at the same time, has the same degree, is producing the same quality work, and yet somehow is being much more successful, right? And what is she? And I think it was a she. I don't remember.
Her name was Rosalind. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
Rosalind and I, yeah, same exact
so
educational background, started on the same day for the same job.
and you're producing the same quality work, and she's being more successful. How is that possible? And it blew my mind that the answer was how to take a compliment. And luckily, I was born with the I come from I think in my experience, just about everybody, especially women, but just about everybody suffers from imposter syndrome. I have never. I'm the opposite. I suffer from Dunning Kruger. I come from a long line of men with delusions of grandeur, and I have learned over the last few days that my brother follows the line too. The genes are strong. So uh, I have seen it in other people many times how they're overly polite or overly modest when given a compliment. In my world, naturally, I just knew that when you're given a compliment, you say thank you. Now in my world, I probably sin in the opposite way. I probably go like, well, what else were you expecting? Of course, it's wonderful, right? And then the person dislikes me for doing that. But basically, I'm going to be uh, I, I whenever I run into an introvert out in the wild, I recommend Quiet by Susan Cain. I'm going to be adding your book to that
Oh, thank
list.
you. Thank you.
Just that one piece, just how to accept compliments in a way that actually helps you grow. That by itself is worth the price of admission for any introvert.
Thanks. Can I spend 60 seconds and
Oh,
tell the listeners about that
absolutely.
situation? Yeah, so one of my colleagues and I started on the exact same day, same background, same job, but they just needed two of us. And I was coming to work and working really hard. About 6 or 9 months in, I look around and no one was talking about me at all. In fact, they all were talking about Rosalind. They had a nickname for her that was called actually the Amazing Rosalind. Right? Sometimes they shortened it to the Roz, capital T, capital R. But they loved her. They thought she was like the best new hire they had, and I loved her too. And instead of getting upset about this or thinking this stinks or I'm going to get a new job, I actually decided to open my eyes and say, what is happening here? And what I realized is that Rosalind was setting up her winning conditions. She was telling people how to think about her in the way that she engaged with our business partners. And the example that I gave there is when Rosalind was praised for her great work, she would say something like, oh, thank you so much. I worked really hard on that. Or thank you. I really enjoyed that project. And what people learned from her responses was that she worked really hard and she really enjoyed it. Now, when people said, hey, Christine, great job on that project, I was, like you said, Tony, humble or self-deprecating. And I would say things like, oh, it wasn't a big deal, or oh, it was easy. I just copied what we did last year. And what they learned from me is that the work that I did, frankly, was the easy work. And I just copied the work that we did last year. And what I learned was that Rosalind and I were doing the same work, but the way that we presented it to our business partners caused them to think about us in a particular way. And I found that when I was able to change the way that I responded to praise, it really changed the way people thought about me. And in this case, saying, thank you, I worked really hard on that. That's not bragging. That's not taking credit from someone else, or saying, oh, thank you, I really enjoyed that project. That's still a very lovely way to respond. And so even just something small like that helps you set up winning conditions. And I would actually say, I don't know if you would agree, Tony, but a lot of the things in the book are just simple tweaks, just simple things of just be aware of this.
100%. No, I loved, I maybe couldn't have phrased it that well, but I really loved that. I really loved that you're not giving the reader a heavy lift of things to radically change about themselves. You're giving tips that really helped you along the way and that made a big difference. And yeah, there's small tweaks. But by the way, we haven't, because I'm tired and I didn't have the book in front of me. We haven't mentioned Survivor yet. So in the introduction, I should have mentioned Survivor. So I'm not a fan of reality TV. I've seen a few episodes of Survivor here and there because I had a girlfriend at one point whose family watched it years and years ago. Now, the way that so for the listener, Christine is a previous Survivor
Contestant, yeah.
Contestant, okay. So, but not just a contestant. You spent 16 years trying to get on Survivor, which has to be a world record, I'm guessing. And then you finally get on, and the experience is a lot different where you expected. And I love how the book is kind of written around like Survivor is not one lesson. Survivor is kind of what like all over the book. So the idea of an actuary on Survivor is really odd. So tell us a little bit about the Survivor story.
Yeah, so me getting on or just me being on?
Whatever you
anything.
Think is most,
so
as much
yes,
as you want.
Well, I'll tell you how it was interesting being an actuary on Survivor. So what does an actuary do? An actuary measures risk, and they do that by using data to sort of look into the future and identify probabilities and say, what's the probability that something like this will happen in the future? And when I was playing Survivor, that actually came into play, and I'd sit and think, okay, well, what could possibly happen 3 days, 6 days, 9 days from now? Who do I want to align with? What do I want to do next to ensure that it sets myself up for success? And what's interesting is, and they actually showed it in the edit on day 4, they gave me a blurb where I said, I'm an actuary and here's how I think about this. And I went through everybody on the tribe and I said, the best person I can align myself with is this guy, Ben. And I had a conversation with him and I said, you and I, if we stick together, we can ride this thing out until the very end. And he and I took first and second place. And so I love that as an actuary. I predicted that on day 4. Yeah.
So I did know that you made it to the finals and got second place. I had no idea that, or I did not catch it while reading while listening to the audiobook, that it was so early on that you allied with him and that you guys did make it all the way to the end.
Yeah, I probably didn't tell that story in the book.
Okay.
But I did tell, so I did tell a few Survivor stories of how I used winning conditions. I mean, by all intents and purposes, I should have been the first one out of the game. I was the oldest one playing the game.
You should have never made it in, right?
I should have never made it in. Right. And I think a lot of people thought when I finally got on, okay, she'll be the first one voted out. And that did not happen. And why did that not happen? Well, partly because I was able to set up some winning conditions. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that I talk about on the book is that the human brain is incapable of ignoring something that is brought to its attention. So I think the example I use in the book is if I say that your office desk chair is wrapped in cotton candy, you probably thought about a chair and or cotton candy because I said it and you have a human brain. And I knew that in the game of Survivor, when I talk to people, it might be the same question, but it's actually different whether I say, is Tony telling the truth? Do you think Tony's telling the truth? Or do you think Tony is lying? Those are two different statements because one will encourage someone to say, to think that you might be lying, and the other one will encourage you to say, you think you might be telling the truth. So how do we use that at work? Well, this is why at work, we don't ever want to say, I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think that will fail, because that puts the idea in someone's brain, could that fail? Instead, you might want to switch it and say, I think that's going to be a big success. I think that's really going to work. I think that's a great idea. And it's just little things like that that might sort of plant the seeds along the way towards a win, an ultimate win, some sort of success.
Makes sense. The one that the how to take a compliment, I think very helpful for introverts. That considering the past one, very helpful for me, right? I never ever thought I've had, I don't know, 12 jobs since graduating college, maybe a little bit less than that, but I've moved around quite a bit, and I've offered many ideas along the way. Never occurred to me to look at whether those ideas had been tried before and how they went before offering them. So I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Let's see what else. I actually just...
I love hearing what people like about the book, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that I love is that when people come to me and tell me their favorite parts, they're always all different parts.
Oh, yeah,
which is so fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I told you before recording, normally I listen to the audiobook and read the Kindle so that I have highlights for things that I want to mention.
Yeah.
In this case, I just got the Kindle book now, so I don't have highlights. But it, quite simply, it's a great... behavioral economics. Okay, so I'm a huge fan of behavioral economics, and I'm not an economist or a psychologist, right? But as an insurance nerd and a business nerd, it kills me how so much of business and so much of insurance, and I'm assuming this is the case on the actuarial side also, but I don't know, is made with the assumption of homo economicus, right? Of this crazy, completely rational being that economics is based around, that doesn't exist.
Does not exist.
So I love the fact that you're applying actual behavioral economics to how do I improve my career? How do I grow my career? I'm already good at what I do, but I'm not getting the results I want.
Thank you. The one part of the book that's one of my favorite parts of the book is talking about strategy versus power versus habits. So you can come up with what is the best strategy and think this strategy is going to kill it, it's going to win it, it's going to be great. It might flop. Why? Because people are concerned with their own levels of power and having control, not in a bad way. I don't say that in a negative way. That is just a basic human response. And also this idea of, I have comfort in my routines, right? So how do the conditions around people's own personal situation change based on your great strategy? And the greatest strategy in the world could fail because of that. So how do you take into account other people when you're pitching this great strategy? Yeah.
I thought that part was brilliant. I agree completely. I wouldn't have remembered right now, but as you mentioned, I do remember what I felt when I read it, and or when I listened to it, and basically, I've seen it happen a million times, a million projects. That I love the example that you opened that section with, where you come into the organization and they're working on this large project, and the people that will eventually work in the resulting system don't even know it's coming, right? It's not like they're not involved in the design. No, they don't even know it's coming. So of course there's going to be trouble, right? Such a simple idea, for God's sakes. Like take the user into account, right? And that goes not just for a system, it goes for everything. Anything that you want to change, yeah, the
Exactly.
change might be good, but you have to understand who that change will benefit and who it will uh, negatively affect in one way or another, and get ahead of it.
That's right. How can you address those things so that when you're ready to roll out whatever is this amazing thing that you're doing, that people are more likely to accept it? And there are things you can do, right? There's winning conditions. You just, so.
I bet that 70% of corporate projects that fail are because something like this got missed, basically.
I would agree with that. And I think that's also because there tends to be this corporate mindset of the bulldozer, right? If I say it at the top, then everybody's just going to do it. And I don't know that that's always wise or ever wise when you can stop for a minute and think about the people who are being affected, whether it's your teammates or other teams or your customers, and just address it.
I think it was never wise. I think they got away with it in a
Exactly
world
right.
of lifetime employment, taboos against changing companies, no social media, in a more hierarchical world that no longer exists. They got away with it, and I think that today it's a lot, right. Mark Zuckerberg had a list of recommended books for like 3 years ago, and one of the books was about how power is not what it used to be. And I can't remember the title of the book, but truly, uh, being the CEO today, it is just not as powerful as it used to be when your people can just leave. Right? And I would say even more in the remote era, where in our
Yeah,
industry
agree.
especially, you don't even have to move.
Totally agree. I totally agree. And so I think it's more important than ever that we can consider, how do our teammates feel? How does our function and other functions and people in our, that's important,
Uh,
right? That is
Radically.
important.
And I am an obsessive reader of nonfiction, especially business books, and I had not seen that idea anywhere. So thank you
I'm
for
so glad that you're an obsessive reader and you loved it so much.
um,
So thank you.
the communication style section. Uh, was one of those things that felt very normal, very like, well, yeah, I know that, but it did give me a good laugh, a good few laughs, and not only that, I've definitely seen people screw it up. So there's definitely, especially with highly technical people, right, accountants, etc., IT people. It happens so often that we just use the wrong language.
And I talk about why people do that, right? Sometimes they want to feel smart, they want to sound smart, they want to be the expert in the room, but that kind of can shoot you in the foot if you're talking to someone who doesn't understand it, right?
And then in that section you talk about the innovation curve, right? Innovators, early adopters, or
Yes, the
majority,
adoption
etc.
curve. Yep.
And you actually, I knew this back in the day, and I had forgotten it. But you mentioned how the researchers that discovered this, or that came up with the adoption curve, were Joe Bolin, George Beale, and Everett Rogers at the magnificent Iowa State University.
That
Go
is
Cyclones!
correct.
And I knew that because I went to Iowa State twice. But I got my undergrad and my MBA both at Iowa State.
That is
Uh,
awesome.
so I love that you actually mentioned that they were out of our. We don't get a lot of credit generally if it's not like
Yes,
agriculture. Uh, so anyway, thank you for
I
mentioning.
gave you a shout out.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I was literally, this was last Thursday, no, last Wednesday, no, last Thursday. It was last Thursday, and I'm on the train on the MARTA here in Atlanta to the airport, heading to the conference. When I get to that section, and I'm going like, "Go Cyclones!" and everybody's
So good, so good.
so yeah, there's just, oh, okay. The section on respecting the current state, satisfaction versus dissatisfaction.
Yep.
I Same story. I found this super interesting. I think that corporate projects could really benefit from this. And I had not. I have an MBA. Nobody taught me this during my MBA. I'm an obsessive reader of business books. Uh, uh, I thought it was super helpful. And in our industry, I run a podcast about insurtech, and I I get calls uh, from founders or potential founders, people who want to create an insurtech, many of whom don't come from insurance. We don't record those. There's kind of a conversation. And I didn't have a tool to point them to say, yes, it could definitely be done better. But is the user dissatisfied enough?
Yes. So if we take 30 seconds and explain it to
Yeah.
listeners, what this is about is that when you have a solution or you have an idea or you're delivering your work, you want to figure out if the person you're giving it to, are they currently in a satisfied state or a dissatisfied state? Because there is a big difference between saying, I'm going to give this to you because you're in a mess and I'm going to fix this for you, or you are doing so awesome, let's make it even more awesome, right? Let's make it faster, let's make it better. And that's really different. I think a lot of consultants, they'll find that's where they get hired or don't get hired because they don't perhaps verbalize the current state of satisfaction. Are you currently satisfied or dissatisfied? I think the story that I tell in there is when my mom comes over and she goes, "How did you get a haircut? It looks so much better." And I think, did I look like hell yesterday? Like right? I didn't get a haircut because I thought I looked so horrible. I just was time to get a haircut. And like, that's like a little bit of a low level insult, right? So when do we go out thinking that we're helping and instead we're low level insulting people in the workplace? So how do we sort of correct that?
Um, so nowadays you do a lot of speaking,
I
right?
do. I'm going to plug in Tony, okay? So that I
No,
don't
no
lose my
problem, no
battery
problem.
pack.
So the learning to stretch section, I thought it was really good. I tell people all the time. I tell my girlfriend all the time, if you've never failed, you haven't pushed yourself hard enough because you don't know what your limits are. She's never failed. She's been
Exactly.
incredibly successful. And the public speaking. So I'm a fellow speaker. I in my case I speak about millennials in insurance, and I'm a natural. Like it's just a natural thing for me. But for most people, it's their biggest fear. So I overall I love how human and how vulnerable you let yourself be in the book at several parts. And the story of accidentally saying the F word. Don't say it because YouTube will demonetize this
I
video.
will not.
Yeah.
I will not.
But instead you were supposed to say factor and you accidentally used
Correct.
it. Uh,
Correct.
in a business meeting, most people,
Very big, important business meeting.
most people would have never stepped on stage again, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that is the one thing about the book is you will definitely get stories about my screw ups as well as my successes and other people's as well, right?
people, this is a fun read. Like this is a
Yeah, it is.
fun
It is.
read
Thank you.
with good with good lessons, with usable lessons in a memorable way. Uh, I laughed, I cried. Like quite honestly, I couldn't tell you right now which section. I
Yeah.
don't remember, but overall, the feeling it left me with overall was this was a, and I did the audiobook version, but uh, this was a fantastic use of my time. It wasn't
Thank you so
just
much.
I read it because I'm interviewing the person. This was a fantastic use of my time. And we're a bit running out of time here. But I'm only like 65% of the book. There's so much more to it. I will probably, to be honest, I probably will reread it, which is odd for me, uh, because since I did the audiobook, I'm sure that I missed some things. Right, most of it I did probably while playing MLB the Show on PlayStation. And so which I play mostly in automatic, but I'm sure that there's things I missed. I really liked that you have a section about kindness, which is something that
I
I think is
do.
deeply missing in our world and in the business world, especially. Um, there's just a lot here. So I'll leave you with this question. Um, what other part of the book that we haven't talked about do you absolutely love talking about?
The one part that I think is critically important is for people to learn to share their value and talk about the value that they bring, not in a braggy way. But I think that we have become, a lot of people are very humble, a lot of people are very, self-deprecating. But again, people think of us in the way that we tell them to think about it. So have your elevator speech ready, and don't put yourself down. Keep getting yourself out there. But again, being able to talk about our own value, that's not easy for a lot of people. It does not come, right? So it comes maybe comfortably for you, but for a lot of people, it does not. And I think that that's super important, because other people are going to brag about themselves, right? So you just want to be able to share your value that you deserve based on the good work that you're bringing to the
I
table.
agree with that 100%. As I shared earlier, like I'm very lucky. I'm wired differently. But at chatwithtony.com, where people call me for career advice, and it was originally created for entry level people. I thought it was going to be claims adjusters calling about how to get to underwriting and call center reps.
Right.
And yeah, I do get a lot of that, and more, I also get executives, and sometimes very high level executives, um, and I very often get questions like from people with much more experience than me. Uh, I have I have 90% of what the job lists as required. What do I do? Apply. And by the way,
Exactly.
it's almost always women or minorities. And I'm Latino myself, but it's almost always women and minorities. And what I tell them, the men are applying at 50%, maybe less. Apply. What do you have to lose?
Right. And when they say things like proficient in versus expert in, people also sort of downplay their own level of expertise. Um, but, I think that we are all capable of so much more than we ever thought possible. The
And
question is, how do you unlock it?
and yes, number one, all of the tweaks that you give in the book help unlock it. And so with my brother visiting this week, so he's 20, he's a little bit lost, right? Graduated high school uh, right before COVID, started college right during COVID, was not exactly the college experience he was planning for, uh, and has kind of bounced around, hasn't really found what he wants to do. So I was trying to make up for 20 years worth of missing advice in 4 days. So I have an upcoming video about this. I bought him 20 gifts, one for each birthday that I missed,
Oh, that's so amazing.
and 18 of those were books. Uh, and I'm not going to say yours made it into a list because he's not working yet. If he had been working already, it might have. Uh, but a lot of the books are tools like strengths finders, right? And I think your book is full of those tools and much easier to apply once. Basically, small tweaks that can make a huge difference.
With fun stories. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thanks.
fun stories make them memorable.
You'll like the end, which if you've gotten only 65% of the way through at the end, I talk about believing in yourself, ultimately believing in yourself. And that really is the final piece, is that you can go through all of these sort of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But at the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself, so
And
anyway,
for a
and I
lot of
tell some stories around that as well. So
for a lot of people, it's really hard to believe in yourself.
it is.
Uh, so uh, the last thing, since your battery hasn't died, um, tell me a little bit about your TEDx and your speaking, and if a listener uh, would like to have you at their next conference, they're a conference organizer. How do they
Sure.
how do they tap you
Great.
on the shoulder? How do they reach out?
Awesome. Thank you for asking. Okay, so you can reach out to me and anything about the book, the speaking, all of that through my website, which is christinehofbeck.com, which I'm sure you'll spell it correctly in your thing. So
I'll
christinehofbeck.com.
copy and paste.
The book is available anywhere you like to buy books. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, whatever, wherever you like to go. The book is available in e-read, ebook, print, and audio. It's coming soon in Spanish next month. Yes, how exciting is that?
So
Yes.
I will probably be buying some copies in Spanish.
Awesome. I don't have a release date yet. Yeah, Penguin Random House bought the rights to translate into Spanish, so that's very cool. You can reach out to me through my website on speaking engagements. Love to do speaking engagements on these ideas of winning conditions. Some people call and say, can you just talk about your survivor experience and be our fun lunchtime speaker? And that is great too. But I would talk to you about, what is your audience goals or what do you want to sort of get out of it? So that's really fun. I do have a TED Talk that's out there, TEDx. I was the featured speaker at the largest university TED Talk in the country. It's called Surviving and Thriving, Living Beyond a Distracted Life. So that was a lot of fun to do. What else? I think that's about it. I think that's everything.
It's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. Christine, thank you so much for your time. It has been a really, really fun one. When it goes live, I will tag you on LinkedIn, and I will
Awesome.
I will include in the show notes the website. I'll tag the book on the Amazon link
Great.
to the book.
Yeah.
And really for the listeners, I don't how many pages is it? Do you remember?
It's not a lot, 205 or something. It's an easy read. It's an airplane read, right? You bring it on the airplane and you're done by the time you get off and you feel like a new person.
Yeah, mine is 210 pages, and
this is it. It's only that long.
People have said that. I've read it in one sitting, so I can definitely see how that would be an airplane read.
Yeah.
Just if you're not thrilled with where your career is, if you're in insurance, grab time and chat with Tony.com, read the book.
Thank you so much. It was really so nice to meet you, and I loved your story.
Thank you so much for your time today.